Haven Township for a residential fire at Riverside Trail. White smoke coming out of the window. House is full of smoke seen from the outside and smells electrical. Central clear at 11:46.
It's a tragedy that has unveiled the darkness of the man who investigators say caused it.
Preliminary indications are that the fire was intentionally set in numerous different places throughout the residence on the interior of the home.
Police say he killed his wife and their 6 children before lighting their house on fire. It is an unspeakable act of violence, and now the alleged reality of who this man was and what was going on potentially in his life is starting to come to light. We're on the case, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. Whatever was going on in the life of Kristopher Karolkiewicz, there's no reason that will ever make sense for what happened inside his home in Grand Haven, Michigan. And we'll get into what appears to have been going on in his life in just a moment. Kristopher Karolkiewicz and his wife Mandy were raising 6 kids, ages 5 to 15. Police haven't released the names of their children. Reportedly, 2 of the kids were adopted from China.
Okay, we're heading to breakfast. And we got to figure out our laundry situation today.
Earlier this month, Mandy appears to have taken their 2 daughters to China on a trip. And what sticks out as we follow reaction to this story, we see the videos that she posted on social media, is just how loving of a person Mandy appears to have been. How loving of a mom Mandy was. One friend wrote on Facebook, quote, "She was an incredible wife, the most amazing mom, a loving aunt, cousin, daughter, colleague, stylist, friend, and so much more. She touched so many lives, and anyone who had the privilege of knowing her was better because of it."
This summer, for the first time, we decided to do a bucket list where we all get to add little things on it that we want to make sure we get done during the summer. Because last year, August crept up on us and we didn't get anything done.
Mandy seemed to love documenting family trips. And here's a picture of her husband, Kristopher, with one of their kids at the beach. Now, all of this makes what allegedly happened on Friday, July 24th, so difficult to comprehend.
Grand Haven Township for a residential fire at Riverside Trail. White smoke coming out of the window. House is full of smoke seen from the outside and smells electrical. Central clear at 11:46.
That's the call that came in just before noon last Friday, dispatching crews to the family's home. Earlier that morning, police say someone had reported smelling smoke, but hours later, it was clear that a fire had started.
You have light smoke showing. Initial crews, established water supply. We'll be stretching a hand line to the alpha side. It's going to be an offensive fire, and I'll be doing a 360 shortly.
Once inside the home, police say they found the entire family, all 8 members, dead.
Units made entry inside to battle the fire because there was smoke showing from the residence. When they got inside, they noticed that there was numerous people deceased inside the home. They then notified the sheriff's office, and we began an investigation into that. So what I can tell you at this point is that 8 people are dead inside the home. There's 2 adults and 6 children.
That's a news conference per WZZM television in Michigan. As police investigated further, they say they realized something very dark may have happened before the fire.
Well, I can tell you that there's 2 adults in the residence as well. Some of the victims that we're calling victims inside the residence at this point did have gunshot wounds to their bodies. We don't have cause of death at this point. I don't know. I don't have 100% identification at this point. I can tell you that 2 adults and 6 children are deceased. We're pending further investigation and full autopsy results, which will be tomorrow afternoon or tomorrow morning.
Any idea what caused the fire?
We're looking into that. We're being assisted by the Michigan State Police arson investigators to see if it was intentionally set. So they're here. They've been on scene for quite some time. We've had numerous units on scene trying to get to the bottom of both the fire and the deaths.
Can you confirm how many victims had gunshot wounds?
Not at this point. No, that'll be pending further autopsy and further investigation.
Is there any further ongoing threat to the public then?
We believe that everybody who's involved in the situation is in the residence.
How could this have happened? How could a family that seemed to be happy be at the center of a tragedy like this? Kristopher reportedly worked as the National Vice President of Sales and Marketing for the American Heart Association. Through the weekend, people tried to figure out what was going on before authorities were called to the house for that fire. Then, this week, the Ottawa County Sheriff's Office shared what their investigation had found.
The deceased adults are Kristopher Karolkiewicz, age 47 of Grand Haven, and Amanda Karolkiewicz, age 39 of Grand Haven. The couple were married. The 6 deceased Karolkiewicz children's name will not be released at this time. These include males ages 15, 12, 11, and 5, and females age 11 and 11. 4 of the children were biological children, and 2 were adopted. After the post-mortem autopsies, it was determined that the cause of death for all the subjects involved in this was ruled gunshot wounds, and the manner of death for Amanda and the 6 children was ruled homicide. The manner of death for Kristopher has been ruled suicide. Additionally, after checking with the Michigan State Police Fire and Arson investigators, it was determined they're working to identify the cause and origin of the fire. We don't have that official report yet, but preliminary indications are that the fire was intentionally set in numerous different places throughout the residence on the interior of the home.
To this point, law enforcement believe that the violence could have started the night before, and then the fire was carried out in the morning, but at this point it's unclear. Police say they recovered a handgun from the scene, and they also say there were multiple spots in the house where the fire was set. They are, though, still going through video evidence, trying to figure out a timeline of what happened. The sheriff was asked about Kristopher's potential motive for allegedly taking the lives of his wife and their 6 kids.
Were there any triggers for Chris as far as possibly his job or any divorce proceedings, anything like that that could have brought an answer to any of this?
That's a good question. That's still part of the ongoing investigation. We're just now getting started in the investigative portion. So obviously most of the first day was entirely on-scene investigation, and now we'll dig in some of the background motives and all those type of things, but I don't have that for you right now.
In the wake of this news, the American Heart Association released a statement to media outlets that said that Kristopher was a former staff member and his employment had ended earlier this month. They have not said why he no longer worked for the organization. Now, as far as Kristopher's relationship with his wife, several media outlets, including the Detroit News, have pointed out posts that Mandy appears to have made on Reddit in 2024. And in these posts, she talked about issues she had in her marriage with Kristopher. Now, the screen name on Reddit is Mandy K1179. And this screen name posted often about life in Grand Haven, Michigan, about being a mom to 5 kids, and her dream of being a teacher. She also was not afraid to share that her husband, she says, had cheated on her, and it nearly split them up. She posted in a group that's called As One After Infidelity, and there is this lengthy post, and I'm going to read it for you. Quote, "I feel you. My WH," and it appears she's using internet slang to talk about her husband, "literally cheated with a younger version of me, except way wilder than I ever was. When my H and I met, husband, I was the intern at the company we both worked for. He was divorced and older than me. Fast forward 10 years and 5 kids. He was cheating with the intern again, the same age I was when I was the intern. I was 5 babies in and actually not in bad physical shape, but I was in the trenches of little kids and just couldn't be who I was before. He had gotten a bonus literally days after D-Day, and I told him I was using it to pay off my credit card, to get Botox, Invisalign, hair extensions, and new clothes that made me feel pretty. I lost tons of weight during the aftermath, but guess what? I never felt better from those things. I still internally blamed myself for not being enough of what he wanted. After about a year of self-loathing, I remember crying and looking at myself in the mirror and realizing how up it was. I was the one who was living so miserably because of what he did. I finally realized that I had been the only person who ever showed up for myself my whole entire life. I didn't deserve to treat myself the way I had been. I decided to rewrite my brain as best as I could. I literally filled up journal upon journal upon journal with nice things about myself, even if I didn't believe them. I stopped dressing for him. I chose to dress for myself. I experimented with my natural curls and wore less makeup. I really leaned into the spiritual experience of getting to know and appreciate myself. It was the best thing I ever did for myself. Don't get me wrong, I sometimes still feel insecure. And 4.5 years out from D-Day, which appears to be the day she's talking about when she found out about this alleged affair, I still occasionally get triggers that suck me in. But my self-esteem is now able to withstand those triggers. Instead of resorting to, I'm the worst, I hate myself, I now find my internal dialogue being more, I don't deserve this. Why am I still living like this type talk? She goes on to say the most ironic thing about it is that now my WH finds my self-confidence to be super attractive. I mean, I think he finds it a little scary too, because he knows that I now know I deserve better than what he gave me in the past and won't tolerate any cheating in the future, which is a win-win, I guess. In another post, she says that she believes the affair that she says Kristopher had with a coworker was, quote, more physical than he ever admitted to. Back in 2024, she talked about how the couple was in marriage counseling. She says that their therapist made it clear to Kristopher that, quote, just know even if things are, quote, good, this is forever a part of your spouse's psyche. Even when things are good, I think of my husband's infidelity. Mandy reportedly worked as a substitute teacher. This is a statement the Grand Haven Public Schools put out that talks about support now being put in place for students who have been impacted by the horror that happened inside of that house on Friday of last week. In the news conference announcing the latest in the investigation, the sheriff was asked about what this investigation now looks like. Kristopher is dead. He's the one they say did this. He will never face prosecution for what authorities are now alleging. He'll never have to answer why he did it because he took his own life.
Well, there's, no prosecution that takes place. When the suspect is also deceased, there's no prosecution that takes place. But it doesn't change in the fact that we're trying to get answers for family. We're trying to get answers for the community. We're trying to get answers for our own responders. And the only way to get those answers is to do a full, fair, thorough, detailed, complete investigation. It's not always fast, but to do a fair and thorough and detailed investigation gives those answers to family, to neighbors, to the community, to the responders that went there. So that takes some time, but eventually people are all going to want those answers, and that's why we work hard to try to get them honest answers.
Joining us now to talk more about this is family law attorney Randy Kessler. There's just no words for the loss of life in this story. And obviously here on Law&Crime and in the true crime world, we're frankly often and almost always talking about loss of life. But the scale here is just, it's unimaginable, especially with the ages. You have these Reddit posts that have been reported by several media outlets having belonged to Mandy Karolkiewicz. And she talks about infidelity back in 2024. And Kristopher, according to these posts, was cheating on her. And then it was something that they really tried to work through. Knowing what happened last week, and you kind of see these posts, you piece together that it appears that he left his job earlier this month. What stands out to you kind of as we're piecing together all of this?
Yeah, well, just based on what you just said, first of all, if you were to say, I want to come up with a checklist of the most sympathetic victims of a horrific crime, right? This would check all the boxes: children, faithful wife, mother, a saint pretty much as far as a parent, number one. Number two, there are signals. You can never predict this, and you never want to victim blame, and you never want to say, well, things could have been different had she, but you look back at it and gosh, so they met when she was an intern and he was much older and divorced, and then he had an affair with somebody similar to that years later, and then she said, I want to stay in the marriage for the sake of the children, which, these are all things we hear all day long, but, sort of like that perfect storm or death of 1,000 cuts. There are all these factors that keep coming into it. Then she was talking about it, or she was talking about how to overcome it. And she was in private groups talking about, and maybe therapeutic for her, how do you survive adultery? How do you survive an affair in your relationship? All these things coming together, and his instability, maybe having multiple affairs, maybe, just losing his job. We don't know why. All these things come together, and it just points out one thing: human beings are unpredictable and have dark sides to them, and this, deepest, darkest. And she had no idea she was that he was like that, or she would have gotten out a lot sooner, I'm sure. She thought he was a bad guy, he cheated, lost his job, but God knows what was going on in his mind, and unfortunately, it's a lot worse than anybody knew, especially her.
Yeah, when you say just a list of the most sympathetic victims, like even Mandy, like she was a substitute teacher. You can see that she was just a great mom to, between 5 and 15, you have 6 kids. 2 of the children were adopted, had just taken, it appears, those 2 kids on a trip to China. And it's just, it's hard when you look at the social media posts in so many of these cases, because you just kind of see the type of people that they were. And for her, it was someone who shine such a great light for so many people. And I just think
he deserves to be part of this world, if not her, right? And
right.
Think she was doing to contribute to.
Yeah. And that's why it's just, I kind of ramble on about it, because it's just like, this story is just, it bothers you in so many ways. And like, you look at him and it appears based off the Reddit posts that there was just a pattern to how he operated. And it's unclear, these posts are from 2024. But I think for, someone in your line of work, where you often get to the point where people are going to be separating, and you see infidelity, even if it was a couple of years ago, and it appears that she talked about like how that's something that sticks with you forever in the relationship. It's just, how do you handle that? And how do you see, like in these cases where it might've been infidelity from a couple of years ago, and it still gets people to a point that they just can't get past?
Yeah. And this, I think, goes well beyond that. It's not just getting over the adultery. It's how do you deal with it? I mean, do you end the relationship at the risk that something like this happens? Do you, how do you end the relationship? How do you address it? How do you get past it? There's so many questions there. And unfortunately, it's usually me, the divorce lawyer, that is the one for the first time saying, listen, even though they're the bad person, they did bad stuff, you've got to protect yourself, because you don't know how someone's going to react to being caught, being outed, being brought to public. Is their reputation important? Is their integrity important? So again, we are not victim blaming. But how do you deal with this? And that may be why she may have stayed with him, not just because it was this for the kid's sake, but maybe she knew that he could go off on a tear. Maybe she saw something that said, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to, make it public. I'm not going to go out and have a big, nasty, ugly divorce from him. Those are danger signs that they're rare, but they're not so rare that Law&Crime is out of business, right? It's just unfortunate that there's seem to be more and more of these situations, love gone wrong, relationships gone wrong, people reacting, people trying to say, you know what, I'm going to show her. And unfortunately for the public and for family members, there's no way to really exact that justice from him. He killed himself, so there's not even a chance to ask him why, or to try to get out of him why. We try to see him be remorseful or pay a penance. That's it. It's over. Why is the only question left.
Yeah. And even though there have been these allegations of adultery, like I haven't seen any sort of allegation of domestic violence in this marriage. He worked for the American Heart Association, and so a lot of ways, like on the surface, like he was someone who seemed like, though maybe they had challenges in their marriage, like from what you can see, like this does seem like it comes out of the blue, where it's, earlier this week, I was talking about a case out of Oklahoma involving a woman named Sarah Gilson who lost her life, and she had filed protective orders in the past. There had been allegations of controlling behavior and domestic violence in that relationship. And people can go watch that story. In so many of these cases, Randy, as you've, followed along with stories over the years, like how often do you see these cases get to this point when it doesn't seem like, there were some issues of infidelity potentially, but it's not like we were talking about violence in the past. And then suddenly it's a case where all of these people lose their lives, and police also say he set multiple fires in the home.
Well, on one hand, I wouldn't be surprised if we did uncover, or something comes up later, that there were incidents and people come out of the woodwork. But yeah, sometimes people just get to a point where they snap. He's, done bad things. Apparently he, met her when she was much younger and she was working for him, or she was an intern, and did it again. That does not equate to violence. That does not equate to an automatic, mathematical formula that he will become violent. But again, maybe she saw it. Maybe that's why she stayed with him. You never know what's going on in someone's head and someone's heart. And gosh, the hard thing for all of us is, like you said, this is unpredictable. Had there been TPOs and restraining orders, not only was it predictable, but then there's somebody else to blame. The system could have protected her better. The judge could have issued a a harsher sentence or a more lengthy restraining order, but there's nothing like that. I mean, how she's just rocking along being a mom, and this happens, and it's sort of that's what's devastating to, I'm sure, everyone that knows her and everyone who loves her and all of her family.
Well, and and for this part of the story is really hard it's all hard, but like this part where, all the children were found in their bedrooms, according to police, so it just seems like this was, on one hand, yeah, snapping, but then at the same time, the amount of time that potentially took inside the home and then lighting fires in multiple locations where it just seems like it was a plan, a horrific plan that was played out in a lot of these cases, because Kristopher Karolkiewicz will not be prosecuted. He will not answer to what he did because he took his own life, and there will be so many unanswered questions because of that. But typically, like, what happens now in these types of cases, knowing that so much damage was done, and yet the person that should be held accountable is no longer with us?
Well, the very slim silver lining is that we, the taxpayers, are not going to pay any money to bring justice. He did it himself, and he took care of that part of it. But, there's no other culprit, there's no other person of interest, no other person of suspicion. But I think law enforcement has to look and see, just in case, was there anybody that knew this was going to happen, that facilitated it? I don't know that they would be culpable if he told somebody something crazy like, one day I might just go snap and kill my family. I don't think that person would be held culpable. But the question is, how can we make sure that people like these are identified in the future and concerns like this are identified? And that's why it's good to shed sunlight on it. It's good that you're covering it. It's good that people are aware of it. It helps me as a family lawyer when I see the inkling of a dispute like this, and I can tell the client, this is crazy to suggest, and I'm not saying that your husband or wife is going to be like this, but be on the lookout, because every now and then you hear these stories, like this case, and I don't want to be the lawyer that didn't warn you. And I'm not saying go create a whole barrier and change the locks on your doors, but be careful. An ounce of prevention is always better than the pound of cure.
And just finally, Randy, I mean, what resources are out there for people? I mean, again, there were no allegations of domestic violence here that we know of at the time we're recording this. But for people struggling with maybe an issue of infidelity in the past, unsure about their relationship going forward, I'm sure there are multiple steps before they get to a situation where they're talking to you when it comes to separation. But at the same time, like, it can be scary for people in a home. Like, she talks about trauma in these Reddit posts and the impact that it had on her. Like, what are the avenues people can go to? And I know on the surface, it's like, oh, you just go to marriage counseling, but it's easy to say that, but it's like, how do people actually get to that point if they do find themselves in a situation, not saying it's ever going to get to the point like what we're seeing here in Michigan, but still struggling day in and day out?
Well, this might sound, simplistic. There's that line from Billy Crystal that, the adultery wasn't the cause, it was the symptom. Adultery is rarely the actual cause. It's rare that that there's something else going on. And I'm not saying with her, but with him, that he would be open to having an affair and open to having a relationship. And if you get a divorce or if there's a separation, instead of telling the whole world this is why, because he's a horrible person, let's just figure out the relationship wasn't going to work. Why can stay between the two of you? Because these are the kind of things that happen. And for another reason, Chris, that's the other parent of your children. And they may find out one day what happened, but you don't need to go blaming. Kids are always going to love both parents, almost always. And they're going to always want to find good in both parents. So to go out and badmouth the other parent, even if you caught them doing something bad, it doesn't really help much. It might help you feel better that it wasn't me because he was cheating. So say that to yourself, say that to your therapist. But marital problems, no reason to go tell the whole world, no reason to cause the other person to try to defend their honor or to be hurt or to snap. And again, we are not victim blaming. There was no reason in the world that she should have any responsibility for this. But to protect yourself, if your marriage isn't good, for whatever reason, if there's cheating, if there's reasons that somebody would want to cheat, then extract yourself from the marriage politely, calmly, respectably, and just move on. Don't keep pointing the finger back at them. Let them go find happiness somewhere else, focus on somebody else. He was obviously so focused on her and so focused on, what she was saying about him or what she thought of him, or, sort of that Dire Straits song, when you point your finger, you got three more pointing back at you. He's pointing his finger at her. It was him, not her.
Yeah. And you just think of, Mandy had so much to give the world. These kids had so much to give the world. And Kristopher Karolkiewicz took it away in just the most horrific way possible. Just a terrible case out of Michigan. Randy Kessler, family law attorney. Thanks for taking the time to talk about this with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Before we go, I do want to put some important numbers on the screen. The first is 988. If you or anyone you know are in crisis, that is a number you can call. It is staffed 24 hours a day. Also, I just want to put up the number for the National Domestic Violence Hotline, 1-800-799-7233. You can also go to thehotline.org. That is another place you can call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify, and we are also streaming on Peacock. I'm Chris Stewart. See you next time.